A lot of the people who have been critical are also at a table negotiating the implementation of their rights.
Tonight, it's delayed for who knows how long, so what's next for the Fed's Indigenous Rights Framework?
We worked with the health inspector, identified all the different product that had to go.
Iqaluit's largest supermarket is back in business after a devastating fire.
We're all snowboarders and surfers, but we feel really responsible to creating change and seeing justice.
And bringing Indigenous perspectives of the land to professional sport culture.
Good evening. Welcome to APTN National News. I'm Melissa Ridgen.
And I'm Daryl Stranger. 9 days after an arson destroyed their warehouse, Iqaluit's Northmart reopened on Saturday.
APTN's Kent Driscoll was there and has this from outside Iqaluit's largest retailer.
In just 9 days, Iqaluit's Northmart has gone from a raging fire to a fire sale. Iqaluit's Northmart reopened Saturday morning at 9 a.m. after being closed for 9 days due to an arson fire. The return of choice to Iqaluit shopping was welcomed out here in the lineup.
I'm excited for the store to reopen.
Well, what's exciting with the store reopening?
It's a big store based for groceries, and I miss that.
Excellent. What are you missing about it? I know what I'm missing. What are you missing?
A bakery aisle. And the meat.
And this line was waiting for no one. Once inside the store, it was hard to tell there had been a fire. There's a slight lingering smell, a bit like an ashtray. The grocery section was loaded. This is all brand new stock. Frozen foods will still need some restocking. David Shatirbuck of the Northwest Company explains what they could keep and what had to go.
The fresh food absolutely had to go. We worked with the health inspector, identified all the different product that had to go. So that product that had to go left the store. Everything has left the store. And then the product that we could donate, we absolutely worked with the health department to make sure that we knew what could be donated, and we are donating that food.
The big draw this morning was the merchandise. Everything that had been exposed to the fire was 50% off. Whether you were there for the fur or for the electronics, it was on sale, if you could bear the lineups. You don't go from this to this without a major effort. The store has been working 24/7 for 9 days to reopen. Residents do appreciate it. Nunavut might have the highest grocery prices in the country, but the return of the Northmart brings more selection and more competition to a market that often lacks both. Kent Driscoll, APTN National News.
A committee of concerned citizens has banded together in hopes of halting a proposed fracking project in Manitoba. The project would see the mining and processing of 26 million tons of fracking sand beginning early next year. Sand would be transferred from the proposed open-pit mine down to the United States. Development of the mine would occur near the Hollow Water First Nation, about 200 kilometers north of Winnipeg. The committee is asking the federal and provincial governments to ensure there is a transparent public panel review of the project.
Thank everybody for coming.
Hollow Water resident Marcel Hardesty says the community is concerned about the environmental impacts.
What is a few jobs based on what we're hearing, that the potential negative impacts all around the ecosystem, the water, plant life, animal life, bird life, wildlife, and the human life. You know, is it all worth it? These are the questions that are being posed by the young people.
As we've previously reported, the federal government's Indigenous Rights Framework legislation has been delayed, and it won't be coming before the end of the year. APTN's Ashley Branson speaks with some Indigenous leaders in Manitoba to find out what should happen next.
Last February, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau promised legislation he would recognize Indigenous rights and put them into action. But many First Nation leaders have concerns about it being rushed and what the framework would mean. On a recent edition of APTN Face to Face with Dennis Ward, Crown Indigenous Relations Minister Carolyn Bennett tries to ease concerns some have over a potential loss of sovereignty and rights under the framework.
No, we want them at the table to, and a lot of them are at the table. I mean, a lot of the people who have been critical are also at a table negotiating the implementation of their rights. And I feel that, just like the Prime Minister says, that everything we do now is based on the recognition of rights respect, cooperation, and partnership.
The Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs Grand Chief Arlen Dumas is relieved to hear of the delay. He says in order to move forward with the legislation, it has to be done properly with meaningful participation from those involved.
It's difficult when you actually see the bureaucrats of the government incentivizing and directing resources to already prescribed solutions. So it causes difficulty, because then there's a question of the motives of why there was such a desire to rush this issue. So that's why I'm very pleased that it's going to allow for more time to have meaningful discussion.
But President of the Manitoba Métis Federation, David Chartrand, fully supports the government's legislation. He says he'll push for the Indigenous rights legislation to continue as planned.
We're ready, and we should not be held back, because First Nations have a larger base, of course, across Canada that they have to worry about, and they already have these legislations, comprehensive land claim. They already have most of this stuff. We have zero. So from our perspective, I think it's a message we will give the Prime Minister in Canada. We want to move forward on this directly as the Métis, distinct with the Métis Nation. And when First Nations are ready, they can come and do their own. But we're ready to do ours.
Ashley Branson, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
The NDP pushed the federal government over the issue of forced sterilization in the House of Commons this afternoon. 60 Indigenous women from Saskatchewan are part of a class action lawsuit. They claim their fallopian tubes were tied, burned, or cut in public hospitals without their consent. The suit has yet to be certified by a judge.
Can you imagine being told that you cannot see your newborn child until you agree to a procedure that will mean you will never have another child in your life? Or being sterilized with no knowledge or consent? This is the reality for at least 60 Indigenous women in this country of Canada, with some cases as recent as 2017. This is more than just a gross violation of human rights and a product of systemic racism. This is enough apologies, enough talking points. How will this government make sure that never happens again?
Minister of Indigenous Services.
Mr. Speaker, our government has been very clear. We know that the coerced sterilization of women is indeed a gross violation of human rights. It is a violation of women's reproductive rights. We are actively working with partners in provinces. We are working with faculties of medical education and health professionals to ensure that culturally safe care is available across the country. This is not something that any one order of government can address alone. All Canadians have a responsibility to ensure that these practices never happen again.
Today marks the 2-year anniversary of a collision that left a young woman dead and a young man paralyzed, and a police investigation that left more questions than answers. The driver was never charged, but an APTN Investigate story last year did prompt Ontario's police watchdog to look into what happened. Here's an update.
Alma Jacobs drives by this spot all the time. It's just up the road from where she lives, and where her granddaughter Bailey Jacobs was mowed down 2 years ago today, 2 days shy of her 17th birthday. Braden Hopkins was the driver. He's a member of the Delaware Nation and was just 21 at the time of the crash. He was never charged with a crime. I spoke with Alma by phone today.
It's just like it was yesterday. I'm very emotional.
Bailey's half-brother Tanner White-Eye and best friend Jordy White-Eye were with her when they were hit. Tanner was left a paraplegic. Jordy sustained minor injuries. How the crash happened and why, no one knows for sure. Was the driver not paying attention? Did he stop at the four-way? Where was he coming from and going to at 1:40 in the morning? Was alcohol a factor? How was it ruled out? Who took custody of the driver? We talked to 3 witnesses who said he wasn't detained for nearly an hour. How did they determine speed wasn't a factor when they didn't even do a speed analysis? And if you're going slowly with your high beams on, how do you not see 3 people in front of you? How is a 350-pound girl thrown to her death and a young man paralyzed? Why weren't people on the scene interviewed until weeks after they called police who hadn't bothered to reach out to them? APTN Investigates obtained the OPP collision investigation and had this retired Winnipeg police traffic supervisor review it.
It's just wholly lacking in any kind of detail.
So if somebody handed you a report like this as a supervisor, what would your response be?
I would be shocked. I would probably send them straight back to the scene to continue with the investigation. But I would be somewhat incredulous that they believed that that was a proper and thorough investigation.
After the crash aired on APTN 2 years ago, the Office of the Independent Police Review Director launched an investigation into the OPP investigation. An investigator called Alma a month ago.
He handed in all the paperwork to the top guy.
All she can do now is wait to see if the watchdog group finds fault with the police investigation.
I'm wishing and hoping that they'd hurry up and get back to me and let me know what's going on, because this is very frustrating and emotional.
Tanner's mother, Yolanda White-Eye, is waiting too.
I just want the truth. I just want the truth. That's all. That's it. Our lives have been changed forever. The truth, that's it.
Braden Hopkins, meanwhile, the driver in the crash, is now 24 and playing hockey in Sweden. Melissa Ridgen, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
The Quebec inquiry is wrapping up in Kuujjuaq.
We'll take you to the hearings, but first, here's tomorrow's weather forecast.
Over on the east coast, we've got 8 and cloudy in St. John's, 6 and rain in Halifax. Nikshawak's minus 18 and snow. Kuujjuaq clear skies, minus 17, minus 13 in clear skies in Happy Valley Goose Bay. Shabugamu, minus 16 and sunshine. Montreal, rain and minus 3. Peterborough's minus 1 with rain, as well as London and Sarnia and Windsor. Big Trout Lake, rain or snow and minus 18. Wawa is snowy and minus 9. Minus 25 and sunny in Pucktawaga and minus 24 and sunshine in Thompson. Snow and minus 10 in Gimli, snow and minus 8 in Winnipeg, minus 6 and snow in Brandon, minus 4 with a mix of sun and cloud in Saskatoon, 2 degrees in Regina. Snow and minus 16 in Uranium City and La Ronge, minus 6 in Meadow Lake and snow.
Hello and welcome back. The final day of hearings for the Quebec inquiry in Kuujjuaq heard from justice committees in Nunavik. They spoke of their struggle making an imported justice system work for the Inuit and the progress made despite their hurdles. Tom Fenario has this story.
Leah Unaluk made history this year. The 35-year-old became the first Inuk in her community of Pavunatuk to become a court clerk.
It's easier for Inuit to have someone, an Inuk, who can speak to them if they don't understand.
Unaluk does double duty, also serving as a translator for the Quebec's traveling court when it comes to her community. But while Inuit defendants have translation during trial, they are sorely lacking it beforehand.
Defense lawyers don't have interpreters with them when they have to meet their clients, and that's when there's a communication breakdowns just before the court starts.
Friday, the Quebec inquiry heard testimony from Justice Committee coordinators for 2 Nunavik communities. Justice committees serve as a kind of liaison between Inuit communities and Quebec's traveling court that passes through their villages. During their presentation, they laid out several major concerns, including what they say is the needless over-policing of Inuit in Nunavik.
In the past, one of our supervisors at the Makivik Justice Department was trying to plead with the crowns or the judges that to always give the condition to not consume alcohol or drugs was just setting people up to breach. The condition to maintain peace and good order should be enough.
In 2015, APTN News spent a week of Quebec's traveling court. Out of the 181 charges on the docket, 31% were breaches of conditions. Earlier in the week, Johnny Anotok of Iqaluit testified that police in Nunavik purposefully target Inuit with no drinking conditions in order to get travel perks.
But when they have conditions, they right away they arrest them because they want to send them down south, and so they could have a flight, free flight.
The Justice Committee coordinators also testified that the constant travel back and forth between Nunavik and detention centres in the south causes emotional stress and eats into resources. Resources that could go into more permanent funding for alternative measures to keep Inuit from reoffending.
If it's a woman, we asked them if they could do sewing and give back to the community. That's the first we ask, if they can sew or make parka or make snow pants or kamiks. And for men, if they go out hunting.
Leah Unaluk credits her community's Justice Committee with helping her turn her life around. 4 years ago, a drunk driving charge landed her prison time. But a reduced sentence and support from the committee once home led her to where she is today.
I was going through tough times, but now I'm so proud of myself for working for court as a court clerk and also a court interpreter.
As for addressing problems in justice up north, her solution is straightforward.
I would like to encourage Inuit to become workers of the court. It's because we would understand each other more and help our people.
Tom Fenario, APTN National News, Kujarapik, Quebec.
Federal Tourism Minister Melanie Joly is touring the country to discuss Indigenous tourism. She says she wants to know how the Government of Canada can support this booming industry. Indigenous tourism is an estimated $300 million economy across Canada and growing. Her latest stop was in Vancouver, where she hosted a roundtable discussion with those interested in the business.
In developing this new federal tourism strategy, Indigenous communities must be part of it. And we invested $8.6 million in Indigenous tourism over the past 4 years, and businesses that will showcase Indigenous cuisine restaurants, hotels that are led by Indigenous communities. They will showcase experiences and cultures, and will use the Indigenous language. So it's really good for reconciliation, and also tourists from all across the world are very interested in knowing how Indigenous communities here, what are their arts and culture and actually history.
A new documentary made by professional snowboarders and surfers aims to inspire social and environmental changes by taking viewers to Indigenous communities that are fighting to protect their territory. APTN's Laurie Hamlin explains.
This new documentary, made by professional snowboarders and surfers, is visually stunning. But The Radicals isn't your typical sports film.
What is that? It's traditional territory. There you go. Yeah. And you have never been given rights to be here.
Scenes of frontline Indigenous activism are mixed in with images of athletes gliding down mountainsides and riding waves in the surf.
We're all snowboarders and surfers, but we feel really responsible to creating change and seeing justice.
Tamo Campos is a former pro snowboarder and an activist. He's also one of the filmmakers behind The Radicals. Tamo lives in Iskut, BC, but is in Vancouver promoting the film. He wants to challenge other sports enthusiasts to look at the places they visit in a different way.
We take our good times, our enjoyment, our hobbies from the outdoors without a real relationship to the place we play and to the communities that have been stewarding those lands for thousands of years. And so the stories are in this film, but at the same time, this film challenges all of us.
The Radicals follows Campos, along with Megan O'Brien, Marie-France Roy, and Jasper Snow Rosen, into 4 Indigenous communities standing up for their land.
The people in these films are absolutely incredible in the way, they're restoring the river, the Bridge River, or they're standing up to fish farms, or they're protecting their community from mining, or they're keeping their culture alive on Haida Gwaii. So it's so important that this film not only lifts those voices, but gives them a platform to be able to tell their story.
The Radicals shot with Lindsay May Willie from the Zawadeno Nation in King Cum, BC. Her community has been fighting fish farms in their traditional territory for 30 years.
To see other communities kind of facing similar struggles with corporations and with the government, it's really neat to feel like we're not the only ones, and then to see us alongside those other communities, and they're really strong communities, it's really neat. And then to have our stories kind of inspire these young people who are athletes, and I wouldn't put 2 and 2 together. It's such a neat film that way.
The Radicals is screening at film festivals all across Canada. All proceeds will go directly to the 4 communities involved. And in an effort to inspire more people and raise more funds, the filmmakers are allowing anyone to host the film.
So we've already raised a couple $1,000 for each community with these screenings, and it's just started. And right now, basically, we're allowing any community, if they want to host this film. There's no screening fee, as long as if they're going to be creating any proceeds from the film, that it be given back to the communities where this film is made.
So if your community is fighting for a cause, all you have to do is contact Beyond Boarding to arrange a screening in your community. Lori Hamlin, APTN National News, Vancouver.
Well, we need to take a short break.
But first, here's the rest of tomorrow's weather forecast.
To northern Alberta, we've got 1 and sunny in Grand Prairie, -5 in Sunshine and High Level. 3 in Red Deer, 15 in Calgary, 8 in Lethbridge, sunshine there. 5 and sunny in Quesnel and Penticton. Dease Lake is 1 with some snow, -7 in Fort Nelson and sunshine. -13 in snow in Old Crow, and -1 in Mayo. -9 in Norman Wells and Fort Simpson. -10 in Fort Laird and Trout Lake. Tuck is -11 in snow. Colville Lake is a mix of sun and -12. -30 in clear skies in Cambridge Bay. -31 in clear in Baker Lake. -32 in Chesterfield and Whale Cove. Iqaluit is -27 in snow. Cape Dorset -16 in snow. Goya Haven is -29. Welcome back. A First Nation received a letter this morning from the Saskatchewan Gaming and Liquor Authority. It was a warning telling the Muscopheating Saulteaux Nation that they are not allowed to run a cannabis store that opened last week. The letter said that without a provincial license, the operation is illegal. However, the Federation of Sovereign Indigenous Nations, along with Muscopheating Nation, says the band has the right to create their own laws around cannabis on reserve. The letter did not state what the government plans to do next, but it did offer the First Nation the opportunity to discuss the issue further.
And lastly tonight, Major League Baseball's Cleveland Indians have unveiled their new uniforms that, for the first time in more than 70 years, don't feature the Chief Wahoo character. The team said that this year would be the final season that they'd wear the polarizing depiction of a Native American. The Chief Wahoo logo has been the subject of mounting criticism in recent years for appearing racist. But while the team will no longer wear the logo on the field, fans will still be able to buy merchandise featuring the controversial character.
About time to see that.
I'd say so.
Thanks, Daryl, for joining me tonight. That's all the time we have for APTN National News tonight. You can always find more on our website, aptnnews.ca. I'm Melissa Ridgen.
And I'm Daryl Stranger. Have a great night.